Welcome back to a fun new edition of Let's Eat Orlando with Amy, Drew, and Biggie. I am Amy Drew.
And I am Biggie.
And we have a guest today. And when you start with our first guest, you start with the best guest. And this is a chef who needs really no introduction, but I'm charged with introducing him today. He put Florida probably on the culinary map in the first place. I don't know that anybody was really paying that much attention to us at all before you showed up, Norman. But please welcome Norman Van Aken to the show. James Beard award-winning chef Norman Van Aken, since that's relevant to today's topic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy Drew. Thank you, Biggie.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I wanted to kind of talk to you because she mentioned you did put us on the map. You've been called the founding father of New World Cuisine. And I figure for listeners who may not know too much about that, may not know the story, can you give us a little bit and define a little bit of that style of cooking and where that idea came from of a New World Cuisine?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question, and I'm sure that many people don't know, and it needs clarification. We were all excited about what was becoming called New American Cuisine, and especially around 79, 80, 81, 82, the magazines, Food and Wine, Bon App, those magazines that were the big magazines of the time were talking about New American Cuisine. And being American, we felt like, yes, our overlords, as Tony would say, we're the French chefs that, scared the hell out of us. And we felt like we were never nearly as good as they were. We kind of had a chance to turn the tables and think about ways to present American cuisine. It began much earlier in places like New Orleans, 100 years before that, with New Orleans style of the fusion cuisine that they were doing, and not calling it that, of course, because that phrase didn't exist yet. But by having this strong identity to their cuisine. Then we began to see sort of simultaneously the Californian food movement, the Southwestern food movement, what began to be called those specific geographical zones, realms of the expression of cuisine by the chefs in that time and in those places that was distinct one from French cuisine or Italian cuisine, or even from other geographical cuisines that might be, say, a New York City cuisine. I was cooking, especially in Key West at this point in time, and enjoying these revelations and emanations of cuisine expressing this American voice. And I was quite tempted, especially after visiting in wine country, quite tempted to just get up and move and be there where it was already going on. But then something inside me said, no, don't go there and be one of 10 or 12. Stay in Florida and try to represent where you live. Eat local. So I was impressed by the philosophy of the winemaker, Robert Mondavi, and how much he believed that the California wines could express themselves on an even stage with world wines of Italy and of France. And I got to meet him and cook for him right around that time, too. A person who was involved in the hotel industry and much more savvy in marketing than myself. We did an event, and he invited the chefs of that time into his office, probably prior to the event. And he said, well, you guys need to come up with a name for this thing that you're doing, because you're all kind of cooking in a similar genre, but nobody knows what it is, doesn't know what to call it. And it's like, what do we call it? This kind of came along around the time or shortly thereafter of the 500th anniversary of Columbus coming to the U.S., which was not the U.S., of course. I think it's called a sesquicentennial. And so the term New World began to be more in my mind because what was happening, and especially happening in Florida as the point of origination in many respects, were the exchange of ideas and ingredients between the Old World and the New World. We never saw things like tomatoes or chilies or chocolate in Old World cuisine, European cuisine, or in the Far Eastern cuisine, until we have people like Columbus. Actually, he did bring back chilies to the Old World. But then the traders, Magellan and the traders that happened in the 1500s, in the 1600s, this really began to revolutionize things in the way the planet ate. The kind of like catalytic changes that happened with the Old World meeting the New World. And so, long story short, I said, well, I think what I want to call it, for me anyway, is New World cuisine. Not California cuisine, not Southwestern cuisine, because it was a broad is a broad category. I didn't feel boxed in by saying New World. You know, some people talk about Floridian cuisine, which I hate that term because it is, by definition, is Florida and the Caribbean. Well, how about all the influences that are coming in from places like Brazil or Argentina or Peru? We're the mother countries to those places. So by having the moniker New World Cuisine, I felt I had the license to cook in a very exploratory way.
I love that. I love that. Um, I wanted, since you've cooked all around, and like you said, you've cooked all over Florida, beyond all of that. I'm kind of curious, since we talked about eating local and all that stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about what excites you the most about right now Orlando's city food scene?
Well, that's easy, I think. And, you know, I'm just meeting you for the first time, but I like your ethos there, eat local. But Amy, I've known for not long enough, but for years. And I think what's excited me the most is that when we first came to Orlando, 2004, when the Ritz-Carlton invited me to create a sister restaurant at the newly built hotel at that point in time, Grand Lakes, everybody said, Orlando, it's all chains, you know, like, you know, we're putting it down for being all chains. But I was like, wait a minute, I'm not turning down Ritz Carlton. That's just, you know, that's too crazy for me, a kid from the Midwest whose mother and grandmother would love to have worn their mink stoles into the Ritz Carlton. I mean, I think this is great. So, what excites me now is this evolution of the more entrepreneurial types of restaurateurs that are, in many ways, maybe they started off in the bigger, well-funded hotel restaurants, but they're creating their own smaller mom and pop kind of restaurants. And with that, just like when you find the depth of the cuisine in France or in Spain or in New York or in Los Angeles, it is being done by usually the smaller restaurants that have the fluidity to express themselves in ways that's more personal.
Curiosity, when you're not cooking for the world, what's like your go-to comfort food at home?
I love cooking at home, and I cook almost every day unless we're in the midst of traveling somewhere. Cooking for me is my zen. I volley back and forth between desk work or in communication and putting together like an eggplant pasta that I made for lunch today. At this point in my life, it's like our meals are, we're getting right down to the personal here, right? It's usually quite a simple, healthy, not healthy, but it is healthy breakfast. It could be a smoothie and a bagel or something like that. It's rarely, you know, pancakes and sausage or a big omelet or something like that. And then around 3 every day, I've not yet landed on what I want to call this because it's not lunch and it's not dinner. I sometimes
Dinner.
feel like I'm
It's
calling it
dinner.
Winter. Being a restaurant person, I sometimes will say to my wife Janet, "Time for family meal," and she's like, "What?" So we will have that, and it's a lot healthier way to do it because you're not, you know, stuffing yourself at 8 o'clock at night and then sleeping and then not moving and all those good things. So I feel like I'm, you know, I've gotten healthier in my old age.
I like that. So I have to ask, because I'm obsessed with sandwiches. I just need to know, like, what's your go-to sandwich?
Ask me today and I'll give you one answer, and ask me next week and I'll give you another answer.
No, I love that. That's how I feel. They're all like my favorite children. So when people ask me, like, whatever's in front of me is what I tell them.
And when I'm in the restaurant and then walking from table to table, the guest will ask me the same thing. What should I have tonight? And I'm like, the same thing. You're talking about my children here. So, but there is a sandwich that I had when we were traveling in Italy. We were there and guests of a winemaker, a wine importer actually, Marco Grazia, and his brother. We were in this market in Florence, and it was an incredible market. It was like not a market you'd see in the United States, because most of the things that were in the case, you don't see here. I mean, you know, the innards, you know, if you asked for a head of veal, you could get it. That kind of a market. And he was shopping because he was cooking that night at his home, which was built like in 1471 or something. Anyway, I said, you know, while we're here, I want to have a sandwich that, you know, I can't get in the US. What should I get? And the brother said, you've got to go to this, and it was like a food truck. He said, you got to go to this food truck that's not far from where you're staying, and you have to have the Lampredotto, Lampredotto. I'm like, I'm on it. So we went there the next day and ordered one, and it was made with tripe. And it was like a really combination of that richness of tripe, but also cut with like anchovies and capers and tomatoes. It was kind of like the most audacious, sloppy Joe sort of a situation.
I
I
love
love that.
that.
But closer to home, I'd like an in season drippingly beautiful heirloom tomato BLT.
As a classic sandwich. Always a favorite of mine. I love that. Um, Amy Drew, I know we want to talk to Norman about what's coming up in his event for October 10th, and I kind of want to be able to highlight and focus on some of that because I just think it's such a special idea of what he's trying to do and who he's trying to showcase.
Well, for the listeners, the coolest thing about this event is that you can go. You can just buy tickets and we'll have all that information available. But yeah, this is going to be a toast to Orlando, featuring 12 local chefs, I believe, and restaurateurs who are part of the James Beard Club, which is a very, very small elite. These are all people who've been recognized by the James Beard Foundation. And you're putting together a really fabulous event, which is going to be extremely elegant and have, the hamon carving stations and the caviar stations. But this is going to be a guest facing event with all of these chefs. The guests will be able to interact with them. It's going to be very, very beautiful and elegant, and the food is going to be incredible, but it's going to be chill, and there's going to be a lot of talking, a lot of fun, a lot of tasting, and I want you to be able to tell everybody who's coming. Got a lot of local superstars on deck for this one.
That's so true. The last big event like this that we did was in honor of Jacques Pepin, the famous French chef that has been the mentor to so many people through his PBS programs. He's still doing it. He's 90 this year. We got together an extraordinary group of the Florida chefs, the superstar chefs. The James Beard Foundation, which memory serves, was begun around 1989 and 88. I first cooked at the Beard House in 1991 or 1992. That's a long time ago. My first cookbook, and I've done 6, was dedicated to Mr. Beard. His cooking, his books, his philosophy spoke directly to me. We talked about New American Cuisine before. I was working in north of Chicago when I really started to turn my wheelhouse toward this. And Mr. Beard's book, Theory and Practice of Good Cooking, was the first cookbook I ever bought. If you were visiting with me in my home right now, you'd see pretty huge library of cookbooks because that's one of my big things is yes, you learn through work, you learn through travel, you learn through talking with people, going to markets, all that exposure, talking to farmers, talking to fishermen. But I also have always been a reader, even before I was into cookbooks. Matter of fact, when I was 8, if somebody said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" my answer would usually be writer, and they would laugh and say, "Yeah, but really, I mean, how are you really going to make money?" But this time, the Beard Foundation, through a woman who's been with him for many, many years, Isabella Wojcik, said, "Norman, you've been doing this for a long time. We'd like you to do a signature one in Orlando featuring the great chefs of Orlando." And I said, "Well, one of the hard parts of doing something like that is you feel bad because some people were invited and some people are not invited. So I didn't want to be the arbiter of who was going to be invited. I wanted the appellation of the Beard recognition to be that arbiter. And I really didn't know, chapter and verse who had been recognized. And I asked the Beard Foundation to help me know that. And so, there's one of our pictures that it will be in, I hope will be in the newspaper this coming week, will be of 12 different people or couples that have all been recognized as semifinalists or finalists for a James Beard Award.
Yeah.
In our industry, forever and a day, until recently when Michelin came to town, and that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
It's been considered the Oscars of our business. It's really tough to win a James Beard Award, and it's gotten just as tough, if not tougher, than ever. And so all the people that are invited have been, touched by the magic of the James Beard Foundation, have cooked at the James Beard House in New York and Greenwich Village, or have done some kind of events with James Beard over the years. But they're all recognized by the James Beard Foundation. So that makes us in a club, as Amy used the term club before. And it's not exclusive. I mean, it's exclusive in the sense of how you can win, but it's not exclusive in terms of who can come to an event or who can go to an event at another at the James Beard House, which they don't do quite as much as they used to. It's a small place. Maximum you could fit in there is 80 or 90 people.
Okay.
We can fit more than that in our restaurant, and we hope to. But the people, I mean, I don't want to say one person's name. If not, I don't say all their names, but just let me know from a time standpoint what makes
I mean,
sense.
if you wanna rattle off the 12 names, by all means, let's show the love to who's being honored and who's going to be showcased at this.
Okay, let's start with women. A woman, Monique Perez, Walt Disney World. She is a pastry chef underneath Stefan Reimer, and Stefan is graciously said it's Monique's turn to shine. He did the Jacques Pepin event with us. One of my former chef de cuisines, Andres Mendoza. Andy is at Citricos. Kevin Fonzo, Brandon McGlamory, Abby Saber, also another one of my former chef de cuisines, Camilo Velasco, who is the chef de cuisine at Tiffin's, our chef de cuisine, Carlos Robles Molina, Chef Lo, as he's known in town, Chef Lo, like Lord for Lalacan, the restaurateurs Sue and Jason Chin. They have been nominated for Best Restaurateurs, so huge kudos to them.
Fine.
They have 3 of their chefs partnering on a single dish, which is an exciting combo. Sort of like, sounds like my Italian sandwich right now. Another restaurant group that's extraordinary, James and Julie Petrakis, and
3-time
Four Roots Farms, Dear
nominees.
Perez. 3 times.
3 times.
They've been, I mean, we talk about sort of the foundation of entrepreneurial restaurants, independent restaurateurs in Orlando. James and Julie were right there at the very beginning. So it's a knockout list. As soon as I had those names and we asked them, everyone said yes. And so the guests are going to be able to come. There's no formal sit-down dinner aspect to this. It is a flow event where people are going to be able to go from station to station, interact with the chefs, the restaurateurs, talk to them, ask them whatever questions maybe they have, talk about maybe favorite experiences they've had in their respective restaurants, ask them, I don't know, a recipe, a favorite ingredient. You know, what was it like cooking in your native country before you came here, if that's the case? All those different things. There will be a couple, let's say, introductory parts where, of course, I'm going to do an introduction and thank everyone. I don't want to totally let the cat out of the bag, but I will for you all. There is going to be a proclamation from the city of Orlando that is going to make this the James Beard Day in the city of Orlando, which I have not told anyone besides you two right now.
I love that.
So it's going to be
That's
I don't know 2 or 3 hours of fun.
But
People could
Norman's
come
has
and they
such a
could go.
nice
There's nothing.
flow for this. Norman's just has a nice flow. It has this sort of circular flow. You can move from outside to inside. There's the bar, there's the dining room. You know, each part of the restaurant has a different feel. And for an evening where you'll be moving around, and I've been at events at Norman's that are similar to this. This is completely off the chain, but similarly where you're moving around, it has a very nice atmosphere for that. I feel like it's a very unstuffy, it's a beautiful place, but it's not stuffy and you're not stuffy. This is the most I think
Let's
Norman
hope
and I have
not.
talked about food. Like usually we would have veered off and started talking about Fleetwood Mac or Janis Joplin or something by now.
Or Stevie Nicks or
Right,
somebody, yeah,
right.
for sure. Doesn't take us more than a minute to get to music.
It's true. But today we're hungry and we're talking about food, and this is going to be a phenomenal event that's benefiting the James Beard Foundation, which does a tremendous amount. When I spoke with Norman earlier, he likened the James Beard Awards to the Oscars, and I thought that this was a very good analogy in that most people just kind of know Best Actor, or Best Picture, but they don't see the sausage being made, in the art world behind that. They only see the glitzy event, and the James Beard Foundation does a lot of grassrootsy stuff with scholarships and programs and different events that will help teach
Yes.
young cooks things or have restaurateurs discuss what it's like, as you said, down in Miami recently, to be dealing with the climate right now, which is really tough for restaurants. And they do these things, and the proceeds of this event will go to support programs like that.
Right. Yeah. The chefs are all donating their time and their expertise, and I'm sure that most of them will have known each other from previous times, but you never know. I mean, this might be a chance for Lo to meet Kevin, or who knows what. That's part of this. And afterward, there'll be a little bit of, beverage for the chefs. So we'll probably have a chance to jaw jack with each other.
I was kind of curious since Amy Drew mentioned this. I know that it's like in partnership with like the James Beard Good Food for Good Mission. I was just kind of curious, what does the mission mean to you personally, Norman? Like of what they do with the James Beard Foundation?
Biggie, it has grown, it's evolved like an organism will over the course of time. In the initial years, it was about the recognition by your peers if you were to be nominated. Even being nominated was huge because these are big chunks of geography. If you're nominated Best Chef South, for instance, we're talking about Georgia and Florida, Southeast incorporates New Orleans. If you win for your region, your area, you're talking about a lot of space. So in the beginning, it was primarily about the awards and the dinners in the different places. But the foundation now has been around since, like I said, around the late 80s or mid 80s. And I was the first chef admitted onto the board of directors by the James Beard Foundation. It wasn't because of my cooking. It was because they needed to grow in a way that they hadn't yet grown. They had a rule that no chefs could be on the board because conflict of interest, which made perfect sense. You don't want to be there where you could, say, hey, you should all vote for my restaurant. So the rule was no chefs could be on it. Then there was a bit of a schism that happened, and there was some concern that the whole James Beard Foundation was going to go sideways because of it and become not relevant. And brighter minds prevailed. This was long after Mr. Beard died. And some really smart people came together and said, this is just too much of a good thing. We need to redirect our purposefulness here. And so Charlie Trotter, my dear friend, and Thomas Keller were very close to the folks on the board. And they volunteered me, essentially, and said, hey, Norman should be on the board. We can't right now. So I'm like, thanks, fellas. What does that mean, And so I became a member of the board, and that meant going up to New York and meeting with the other board members. And not because of myself, I was more of a listener on this part, was how to take the foundation in a direction to be a little less razzle dazzle and more towards efforts, programs. To the charities were always there from the very beginning, but to try and do things for the industry. And this is, if it wasn't timely, this was probably 12, 15 years ago where I first went on the board. And while you're on the board, just to back up a minute, you are ineligible for an award. And so is everyone on your team. So for those 2.5 years that I was on the board, that meant my restaurant in Orlando couldn't
Yeah.
be considered. But what we've all seen and lived in many ways, because you all are in the business and in it too, is the challenges for the restaurateurs. And that's challenging for the hotel parts too. I consult for a hotel group as a culinary expert. It's become a tough business to survive in, even tougher than before. And my heart goes out to the people who are in their 40s, their 30s and 40s and such that are trying now to do what I was doing in the 90s. My heart goes out because things cost much more than they used to. Land costs more than it used to. The competition is fierce. I mean, it's fierce in Orlando. It's fierce in Miami. My independent restaurateur friends, some of whom used to be in my kitchens that are now operating their own restaurants, they know that they can always call me and we can talk about, how'd you get through that hill or over that forest fire, whatever the situation metaphor could be. But the Beard Foundation has these programs, and Amy was touching on that. I went to one not long ago in Miami, and it was basically a kind of a camp session for the restaurateurs to come to one person's restaurant, the woman who actually won Best Chef South this year. We went to her restaurant, and it was like pretty shocking to me because it's hard to get chefs anywhere functioning at 9 o'clock in the morning, because of our late schedules,
Yeah.
or at least the schedule that I was on for. I was doing it as much as I used to be doing it. But at 10 o'clock in the morning, everybody was there. And there were people from the foundation that were there. There were even some local political people that were there. And this was a get together on how people can overcome some of these challenges, how there's, what kind of government grants there could be, things that could keep people in business. And the chef restaurateurs, were sort of bearing their souls. Like, how did you accomplish that? How did you get that variance? How did you do this? What were the things that allowed you to still be able to think about being in business 5 years from now? And
Right.
that's something that the James Beard Foundation now is more about than what it used to primarily be about.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so I can't even imagine. I talking with so many different and knowing so many different restaurants and chefs and just people trying to, it's like you see the food that they're putting out, which is like their love letter of like what they're trying to do when it comes to their food, and it's just like the cost and so many different barriers making it harder and harder. So I definitely that's awesome. I love the James Beard Foundation. I think it's great what they do and what it is, and obviously to me they are like the Oscars or the Emmys to
Yeah,
when it comes to chefs
yeah,
and what they're providing, and I think it's amazing. And I love the fact that on October 10th you're going to be showcasing Orlando's,
yes,
and I
to
think
Orlando.
the toast to Orlando, and I think that's going to be just an absolutely awesome idea. I love the fact that it's also Florida casual. I like that idea, especially if you're going to be eating and enjoying all the different foods that they're going to be available there at Toast to Orlando at Norman's.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's going to be a
Come
good
one,
time.
come
It's going to
all.
be a
Let's do it.
delicious one for sure.
Norman, can you give us information? I know us people are listening, and we're going to put it in the show notes and stuff like that as well. But can you provide like where they can get more information? Is it on your website? Is it on Norman's website? Give people that information so that they can kind of actually see some of that, or be able to go on there while they're looking and listening to this and maybe twiddling on their phones and doing that.
Yeah, yeah, and we can certainly share the link to it as well, so that if they go on to your website, for instance, they can go to that link and make the reservation through that. It's with Open Table. Our website is www.normans.com. Simple, no apostrophe in the Normans part of it. That's where you'll find all that stuff. I have it on my own website, which is Norman Van Aken. I'm I'm looking forward to seeing it in the newspaper soon.
Yes,
As a matter of fact,
the
you're going to be able
story will
to
drop
get your
very soon, and we'll put that link in there as well. Tickets are 300 for the event, which includes
for the event.
everything. And if you go with a friend, buy two, because then it's 250 each, 500 for couples. And that's
Right,
just
right,
you and a
right.
friend, whoever you want to go. Bring your sister, bring your mother, bring your buddy.
Right. Bring your camera because you're going to want to record this for posterity to show your friends and make them quite jealous that you were eating jamon serrano while you're sitting out there with your champagne in hand.
Yeah,
Oh my
I love it.
gosh,
You and it's
I
the
want to go
beauty of it
now.
is like there's hors d'oeuvre stations, there's wine, there's cocktails, there's mocktails, live music, a silent auction. So definitely going to be a celebration and a festivity. I think who better to do it than you, Norman? You know what I mean? Like for you to be able to do something like that. I did have one last question. Just listening to you and all the different people you've talked to and inspired, has there been or is there someone who has inspired you along the way in your culinary journey?
Absolutely. I mean, my first and always inspiration is my mother, who cooked. She wasn't a chef, but my earliest memories of food have to do with her making homemade strawberry jam with strawberries that we went out and picked. And she was huge into the whole Girl Scout thing. We canning, preserving, jarring, all of that stuff. Being 6, 7, 8 years old with my two sisters, one older, one younger, and my mom in the kitchen. Had no idea about being business at all. Whether going to the farm stand in the summer because we're raised way up north, and fresh corn in season, all of those things imprinted me heavily. The first person who was in whites, a chef, was not a person anybody would know, but it was the third place I cooked. The first place I cooked was a diner in the town I was born in. The second place I cooked was in Key West. Ran down there and escaped to get away from everything. And I was working in a barbecue. I was working the midnight shift, a place called the Midget. And then we went back north again. We had a very elliptical relationship with going back home, and my family and her family were like, when are you kids going to figure this out? But my third job was at a restaurant my mother worked at years before, where the chef was Japanese. He was sadly he had been the chef de cuisine, but he had to step back because he was dying. He was of stomach cancer. And during this is a restaurant where it was two shifts. The Salma men, they worked the lunch shift and they would go to the bunkhouse. Almost all of them lived in the bunkhouse rather than having homes. And then they crash or they go to the track and then they come back and work dinner. Well, in those middle hour and a half, 2.5 hours, Just he and I were the only ones in the kitchen. And we had our work to knock out, simple prep, like getting the lemons where paprika was on one half and chopped parsley was on the other. So it could go on the Dover sole or tourne the mushrooms and all those different things. But then he would make us lunch. And being Japanese, it was some food that I had never had before. But there was something so incredibly poetic about him, Biggie, where I'll never forget him going out. It was in spring, late spring, maybe May. Went out into the yard of the it was an inn, and he went out in the yard and he came back with like a bowl of dandelion greens that he picked out of the grass, and I'm like, what are you going to do with that? And then he made us this salad of dandelion greens and some seared uh, filet mignon, no problem there. A little bit of ginger soy kind of dressing on it. And he, even though he was moving out of this mortal world, he was showing me this love of cuisine that was transcendent. And so when I think of the things, the most important lessons I've ever learned in a kitchen, I'd start with Toki. That was his nickname, Toki.
I love it. I love it. I'm so glad I asked that question, because that's awesome to be able to experience those things. And I think, and who knows how many people have had those experiences with you, Norman, and you're their version of Toki.
That's nice.
So
thank you.
Amy, do you want to wrap up our episode today? I definitely a lot of fun. I loved having you on, Norman. Love getting the chance to meet you and talk about what you're doing at Norman's, as well as also the Toast to Orlando. I'm looking forward to hearing people and getting the love to show Orlando all the love for what they've done and what they're accomplishing.
Thanks so much. I'm psyched to be doing this, and thank you so much for having me on as your first guest ever. I did not know that.
Yeah, this is very exciting. And
we'll do it again sometime.
Like I said, knocking it out with the best. As you can see now, Biggie and listeners, like, speaking with Norman is always, it's like reading a book. It's like the words just flow, and you are a writer, obviously, and I've enjoyed your books, and it's fantastic to have you on the show. It's always great to see you, my friend, as well.
Thank you.
If you're interested, obviously you're going to be able to see all the stuff at Norman's website, but Norman's is located is it Delagio Town Center in Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Definitely make sure to go check them out. If you can't make this event, you can always go and visit Norman's and be able to enjoy a delicious, New World cuisine. You're just going to get I loved your video, by the way. I saw a video of you on one of your reels, and it was you sitting at the restaurant and just kind of talking about hey, come. And it was just like a great little video, because I was like, yes, Norman, I do want to come and eat at your restaurant and enjoy a cocktail and have some of your delicious cuisine. So yeah, definitely great job. I'm super excited for you and great having the opportunity to be able to talk with you. Thank you so much.
All right. Bravo. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, keep eating local, support local. Definitely check out the notes and go check out Norman's, as well as also, if you have the ability to go, October 10th, Toast to Orlando. Go out there to support Norman, as well as also the James Beard Foundation, Good Food for Good Mission. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
All right. Ciao.